Hey everybody, welcome back. So if you watched my short, you'll know that it is time to work on the old Jeep again. It is 75 and beautiful out in Arizona today, so I'm going to have 5, 6 months of really nice weather to work on this. I got a lot done last year and I'm really happy with what I got done, but there's still a lot more to do. First thing, I want to get all the dust and stuff cleaned off it from having basically had nothing done to it for the past 4 months, and I want to make sure it runs as good, at least as good as it did when I shut it off last year. And the first order of business, I think, is going to be this. I'm going to convert this to HEI. And I know I said I wasn't because the Motorcraft ignition has never given me any trouble, but I can clean a lot of wiring out with it. The HEI is pretty much a one wire hookup, and I can get rid of all that wiring, all that possible future troubles, and clean the underhood up even more. So that's the first order of business. I posted a video about this. This is the least expensive HEI conversion distributor I could find. The brand name is Most Plus. I'll see if I can find a link to it below or one just like it. There's a bunch of identical ones with the same brand name. You know how the Chinese stuff is. Anyway, let's get the cleaning, starting, and ripping and tearing.
So I lost the original audio and I'm having to do a voiceover, but that's okay. I'm going to let you know what's going on. That box you're looking at there sitting on the fender, that is the original Motorcraft ignition box. It mounts to the inner fender there right above the charcoal canister facing the firewall. Has two bolts holding it on and two plugs. Unbolt it, unplug it, remove it. It's going away. It's not going back in the vehicle. Now, the two plugs that go into it, one of them is a 4-wire, has 4 wires coming out of it. That one goes into that loom that's on the upper part of the firewall. It leads all the way over to the other side of the vehicle and it plugs into the distributor. That whole thing's coming out. Plugs, wires, and everything, pull it all out. It's not going back in. The other connector that's on there is a 2-wire connector, red and blue. The blue one goes to that connector in the firewall. It's not going to be used. I just snipped mine off at the firewall and put a dab of silicone over it and promptly forgot about it. The red wire coming from that plug goes up to that kind of funky 3-way factory splice there. You can barely see at the top of the video. It's spliced into a heavy 10 gauge wire that comes out of that connector at the firewall, and then also has a wire that goes over to the other side and connects to the coil. The only thing we want to save out of all of that is that 10 gauge wire coming out of the firewall. So cut that 10 gauge wire at the just below that splice. Get rid of the rest of it, the plug all the way over to the other side where it connects to the coil and the coil as well. And we are going to solder a new 12 gauge wire to it, run it to the loom, and it's going over to the other side, and it's going to power our HEI distributor. So that original split wire loom, it just crumbled and fell apart when I touched it. So I pulled it all off out of there and I'm going to put new stuff on. I took out all the wires that didn't do anything, including the one to the original electric choke and those ones that go to the coil and distributor of the old ignition system. And I'm going to run one new 12 gauge wire from that heavy 10 gauge wire at the firewall that had that funky 3-way splice in it, and I'm going to add new loom.
Okay, it's another day working out on the Jeep, and as you can see, I've made some progress. It's been about a week since I've been out here working on it. I have been flooded with paying work, which is kind of a double-edged sword. It's bad because I don't get to work on my projects, and it's good because, well, the holidays are coming up, and it's always nice to get a little extra money for that. But as you can see, I've cleaned all this up, and I apologize for losing the video or the sound in the previous videos, but I think it's pretty obvious what I've done. I've got the stock box pulled out of there. I fixed up the one wire and took the splice out of it, the big heavy wire. I removed the wire that wasn't necessary, and I just ran a new 12 gauge wire, and I put all new loom in, and I took the wires out of this harness that didn't need to be there, and I ran all new loom and tie downs for this over to the other side. On the other side, I have the old distributor and coil out of it, the new one in. It should be set about right. Now, I set it on top dead center, and I didn't like where the distributor was, as far as relationship with this. Where it was would put this this wire harness there all the way back against the engine, and I didn't like that, so I moved it one tooth clockwise, which will let me rotate this around more in a position like this. And depending on where the timing sets it, if it sets it out here, great. If it sets it back further there, I may move it one tooth further around and actually move it out in this area like that. But I'd be happy with that if it was there. And if when you put these in, if they don't drop down, you may have to go in with a long screwdriver and turn the oil pump drive slightly. It can be fiddly till you get it right, but it'll drop right down in and sit flush. Now, the wiring that comes down here, I redid all of this too. That leaves me, here's the pigtail from the new distributor. Red is hot, green is the tack wire. I need the tack wire for the Holley projection. That's this white wire here. Then I have my 12 gauge wire I ran over. That's this red one. It's going to go into the red pigtail. And then I have the wire from the I terminal. That's this one, the wire from, I think, the I terminal on the starter solenoid. It goes into this red wire as well, tees in with the other two. Now, this wire here, oh, another thing, as soon as I touched the wiring down here, because they were really long, they ran into a loom that looped way down there and back up, and I didn't see the point of that, so I wanted to shorten it. And as soon as I touched the alternator plug, it crumbled and the wires fell off. So I got a new alternator plug. Now the red one, if you have to do this yourself, the red one just gets a ring terminal put on it, and it goes to the same terminal down here that the large battery wire goes to. And the the white wire is what's called the excite wire. It gets 12 volts into it. And a lot of guys I'm seeing are just taking this heavy 12 gauge wire from the other side for the ignition and putting that in there on this. Now that works fine and it'll run the engine. The problem is, if you have one of these pigtails that does not have a diode on that white wire, you will not be able to turn your engine off if you have a carburetor. It will just keep running because the alternator is now powering the distributor. So you'll have to either put a diode in that. You can also get a relay, and you can mount a relay someplace and you can run it through a relay. You can switch the circuit that it's on, or you can toss one of these little things in. This plugs into the alternator, then the alternator plugs into this, and that gives you your diode so the engine will turn off. I bought one just in case. I have a separate wire down from that goes through the loom that runs to the alternator. I'm assuming that's going to be a secondary circuit that will not let the alternator feed back in. But we're going to find out. Also kind of odd, this wire that comes around for that is a solid wire and not a stranded wire. I'm not sure why they did that, but I've also noted that it's just about impossible to solder to that solid wire. Also, this vehicle does have the Holley projection on it, and when I turn the key off, the fuel pump turns off. So I think that's going to be a moot point on this vehicle. I don't think I'm going to have that issue, but if I did, that's why I bought one of these, just to have it around. They're cheap. I think I paid $7.99 for this one, something like that. I'll put a link on Amazon. May have been $9.99, I can't remember, but they're cheap enough that I got one just to have for insurance. So I'm going to get this wired up now. I'm going to get the plug wires on it, and I think at that point in time I'll be able to start it, or at least see if it'll run. So let's do that. Okay, so this conversion is all done now. I apologize for losing the audio in the previous videos. I'm the tech guy, and the tech guy dropped the ball, and I'm going to do a voiceover on him, and you probably already heard it. Sorry about that. But this is all done. I have got the wiring completed down here, and I have kind of tidied everything up. The alternator wiring down here, I have tidied up and put I'm going to put another wire tie down there, and my loom is all nice and tied away down there. I have I have my windshield washer and coolant overflow bottle back in. These wires are all tidied up. And for the record, I have already started this because when I first tried, it wouldn't start. Now that shouldn't be any real big surprise for the first time you know, on a conversion like this, the first time there's issues. And I'll tell you right up front what the issue was. The issue was, and I don't know if I got it in a previous video, but I mentioned that I didn't like how this distributor originally sat as far as its clockwise, counterclockwise rotation is concerned. I thought this where these wires come out were way too close to the block, so I turned it one notch. And the problem with that was when I went to start it, I didn't realize that I could not turn it far enough to even reach 0 degrees before top dead center, because that made this wire too short. And again, if I haven't already mentioned it, these wires go to a 98 Wrangler, Grand Cherokee, whatever, and I got them because somebody told me they would work. I looked at my 98 Grand Cherokee, I thought they would work, and I thought, well, if they don't, I'll put them on the 98. So, but they do work, but I just had to rotate the distributor too much this way. Once I turned it back one notch, I also at the same time went to some basic troubleshooting. I got one of the little blinky light things on a spark plug wire, and I made sure I was getting spark. This is a Holley TBI, so I popped the air cleaner off. I made sure I was getting some fuel at the injector, the TBI injector, and I was, so I knew the problem had to be timing. So I put that back, set it on top, pulled this plug wire, got it set to top dead center, got this set exactly at 0, and it started right up. So, and it shuts off too, so I don't need the pigtail with the diode in it. It's probably shutting off simply because it's killing the fuel pump, or it might be that wire that runs down here, the forget what they call that wire. This is the sense wire. That wire is something else. Forget what it's called. I may have mentioned it in another video, but my brain's not functioning this morning. So it may be that just runs through a completely different circuit, so it's not backfeeding the coil. So anyway, I think that's all I have to say about that. Oh, if you hear any squealing, it's the alternator belt. This vehicle is one of the hardest alternator belts I've ever had to tighten, and of course that's because I moved the alternator from up here to down there when I added the AC compressor in. And you wouldn't think it's hard because it's fairly open. It's not hard to see or get to, but it has to rotate this way, and there just really is no way to pry on it. So anyway, if you hear it squealing, it's because I ran the battery low cranking it, and the alternator is now working now that it's all hooked back up. So it's noisy. Also, this AC idler pulley was also squealing and squeaking on me, this one here. And I mean, the bearing in there is probably 25 years old. I put it in at the time I did the AC conversion, and I sprayed it with some Croil, and it stopped. But if it starts again, you'll know that's what it is. Anyway, it runs every bit as good as it did before I did this. I wasn't really expecting anything else because this wasn't done to make it run better. It was done to kind of future-proof it and to clean up the engine compartment, get rid of all that wiring and the extra box and the separate coil and all that. So anyway, let's get this on a tripod and I will start it up. As I said, it's running every bit as good now as it was before I did the conversion. It is not running as smooth as I would like or that I think it would, but if you may remember, I rebuilt the Holley box with all new little little resistor pots in it, variable resistor pots, because the old ones had broken the stems off of them. So I did all that, and one of them had broken the contact loose off the board. So I did that. I do not have that set right. They're set to, you know, three-quarter rich position. I really can't get those adjusted the way I like until I can drive it. The advance isn't adjusted really where I think it is best. These things are very forgiving on their advance. You can pretty much run between 0 and 20. And I'm guessing right now I'm set around 8 to 10. I need to get that dialed in. And from here on in, I do it by ear. I typically turn it advanced until it doesn't start, meaning it goes and stops and stops, and then I back it off until it will crank without doing that. And from then on in, it's drive it and tweak it till I get it where I like it. And the Holly box is the same way. So I've got new tires coming for this. As soon as they're on, I'm going to get some tags on it, and I'm going to drive it and get it running better. Anyway, thanks for watching. Like and subscribe, all those same crap you guys know what to do. And I'll catch you in the next one. Leave any questions or comments below. Would love to hear them. Bye for now.